I worked tirelessly to raise my adopted daughter to adulthood, but the first thing she did after graduating from college was not to repay me, but to set my entire family on fire. Who told you to hide the fact that my father is a wealthy man? You've wasted so many years of my life, go die. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I adopted her. This time, I don't want to be a farmer anymore. I want to be a snake. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I accidentally met Susan. The image of being brutally tortured and ultimately burned alive in my previous life still lingered before my eyes. Just thinking about how my adopted daughter, whom I had raised with great hardship, burned my entire family to death as soon as she graduated from college, I couldn't stop trembling uncontrollably. I quickly turned around and took another, less crowded path to the orphanage. In my previous life, it was on my way to the orphanage that I discovered Susan crying loudly under a big tree. I pitied her for being abandoned, and I happened to be looking to adopt a child. Her appearance made me feel like it was a gift from heaven, and I believed we were destined to be mother and daughter, so I cancelled my plan to visit the welfare home, turned around, and took this crying baby home, naming her Susan, hoping that her life would be smooth and successful. But it wasn't until she turned 16 that I realized this was no gift from heaven. It was clearly a scheme orchestrated by my mother and my sister. They knew I wanted to adopt a child but didn't want my sister's pregnancy at 19, out of wedlock, to be exposed, so they deliberately left the baby on the main road I walked every day, ensuring I would notice her and adopt her under a legitimate pretext. It was this very act that led to the tragedy of my family's entire life. What I thought was fate turned out to be nothing more than a cruel twist of destiny. Director Smith of the welfare home reviewed my documents and, after confirming my eligibility for adoption, took me to the area where the children usually played. Upon reaching the window, she pointed inside with her hand. Miss She, as per your request, I've selected a few, those building blocks in the middle of the hall. Here are their personal profiles, you can take a look first. And later I can have them come out to meet you, so you can get to know each other. I took the stack of documents handed to me by Dean Smith. While flipping through them, I casually glanced at the children inside the window. The glass where we stood was one way, designed to allow prospective adoptive parents to observe the children without disturbing them. The children who were building with blocks were now in a dispute over color choices, each voicing their own ideas. I watched and smiled knowingly. Suddenly, I noticed a little girl drawing in the corner. She was wearing a white dress, now stained with colorful marks from crayons, and had two small buns tied on her head. Though just a little person, she looks quite serious when drawing, like a little old man. She is very focused on her drawing, staring intently at the drawing board. After finishing the last stroke, she finally lets out a sigh of relief, smiling as she wipes the non-existent sweat from her forehead. Then she picks up the drawing board and toddles around on her little feet, showing it to the other children, but everyone is busy playing with their own toys, and no one is willing to look up at her drawing. She pouted, holding the drawing as she sat by the door, a hint of grievance on her face. I couldn't help but chuckle. That's kind of cute. Dean Smith smiled and looked at the girl. That's Flower. She has always loved drawing and is quite talented. She's a very likable girl. Her parents were good people too, but it's a pity that good people don't always have good fortune. Both of them sacrificed their lives in earthquake rescue efforts. If it weren't for the accident that took her parents' lives, she would have had a very happy family. It's just, I was somewhat shocked inside and raised an eyebrow, signaling for her to continue. Dean Smith frowned. It's just that she's a bit older. She's already 6 this year, she sighed. Earlier this year, several couples were interested in her, but they ultimately gave up because of her age. I nodded, already understanding the situation. Even I used to think the same way, believing that adoption is always better the younger the child is. But after adopting Susan in my previous life, my perspective changed. Some ungrateful people are just born that way. It doesn't matter at what age you adopt them. I spoke up. I'd like to go see her. Dean Smith nodded and led me around to the front entrance. Sitting at the door, Flower was feeling downcast until she saw Dean Smith come in, and her eyes lit up. She immediately raised the drawing board in her hand. Dean, look, this is the new flower I drew. Her eyes were bright, and her face even had some paint on it from being too absorbed in her drawing. Though she didn't know when it got there, she looked just like a little calico cat. Dean Smith patted her head. Flower, your painting is so beautiful, it looks just like the real thing. Flower hugged her drawing board, her eyes crinkling into happy crescents as she smiled. I entered the room a few steps behind the dean. When Flower saw me, a flicker of anticipation immediately flashed in her eyes, but then, as if remembering something. The light in her eyes instantly dimmed, and she seemed to wilt like a little flower. I crouched down and gently asked her, "Little one, I just saw you drawing. Can you tell me what you drew?" My request made Flower blush a little. With a flushed face, she showed me her drawing board and said in a clear, childlike voice, "Auntie, I drew the little flowers in our welfare home. They bask in the sun happily every day, just like us." Then she pointed to the different flowers on the drawing board and introduced them to me one by one. "This one is a rose. I named her Princess Fragrance. This one is a sunflower. It's called Prince. This is..." I carefully examined the few lifelike little flowers on the drawing board, which were depicted in vibrant colors and full of vitality. After she finished introducing everything, I sincerely praised, "Flower, you draw so well. Each flower seems to have come to life." Upon hearing my compliment, Flower's face lit up with a shy yet radiant smile. "Thank you for the praise, Auntie. When I grow up and earn money, I'll sign up for a painting class. Then I'll be able to draw even more beautiful and vivid flowers. When you come to see me again, you'll be able to admire the big garden I've painted." She spread her hands out to both sides, her face filled with longing for the future. I laughed heartily and took her small hand. "Don't wait for later. Come home with me now, and I'll sign you up." When Flower packed up her things and ran toward me, my mom arrived. She was holding a baby in her arms, and upon seeing me, she hurriedly ran over. After she stopped, she spoke somewhat breathlessly, "Ah, Juan, so you're here. Mom was looking for you everywhere." I sneered coldly inside. I thought she would give up if she couldn't find me, but I never expected her to actually come looking for me. "What's wrong, Mom? Why did you suddenly come to the city?" My mother lifted the child in her arms to show me, smiling as she said, "I've been dreaming about you a lot these past few days, and my heart just felt empty, so I rushed over from the countryside early this morning, and guess what? I actually found a little baby." Flower, who was standing beside me, let go of the corner of my clothes she was holding when she heard the words, "little baby." My mother obviously noticed this scene, glared at Flower, and then continued, "Didn't you always say you planned to adopt a child? Well, here she is, Winnie. The fact that I ran into her today is definitely fate. You two are destined to have this mother-daughter bond. You have no idea. Someone just tried to take her to the police station, but thanks to your mom, I stopped them and kept the child from being taken away." After saying that, she tried to stuff the child into my arms. I quickly stepped back, avoiding her movement. I beamed brightly and took Flower's hand. "No need, Mom. I already have plans to adopt Flower. As for this child picked up along the way, you should still call the police." Flower looked at me with sparkling eyes, and I gently stroked her face and said, "Silly girl, Auntie has already promised to take you home. How could I go back on my word?" Flower didn't know what to say. She just wrapped her arms around my waist, her eyes brimming with tears, and whispered, "Thank you." My mother was stunned. "This child looks like she's already 5 or 6 years old. If you adopt her, how can you possibly raise her to be close to you? Don't end up bringing a thankless person into our home." Flower looked up at me, her eyes filled with longing. "Auntie, I can take care of it. I promise I won't be ungrateful." My mom rolled her eyes dramatically. "You say you won't, but how can you be sure? How can you guarantee it?" I gently tapped Flower's nose and teased her on purpose. "Yeah, how can you guarantee it?" Flower immediately grew a bit anxious and pulled out a pen and paper from her somewhat worn-out bag. "We can make an agreement and sign a contract. If I ever become an ungrateful person, you can sue me and send me to prison." I laughed heartily, crouched down, and asked her, "How did you know you could sign a contract?" She raised her head proudly and said, "Jenny taught me." She was adopted by a lawyer mom and learned a lot about the law from her. Last time she came, she told me I could use the law to protect my rights, but right now, I only know that I can sign a contract. I haven't learned how to write one yet, but don't worry, Auntie. Jenny told me there are templates for these things. Once I find a template, we'll sign it right away. I will never betray you." I chuckled softly, stood up, and took Flower's hand. "Since you've explained it so clearly, let's hurry back and sign the contract." My mother stepped in front of me. "Ah, Juan, are you really going to adopt this child? Aren't you afraid of raising an ungrateful person? And if you adopt her, what about this child? Why don't you just adopt them both? After all, what's the difference in raising a few more?" I lowered my gaze slightly, but my heart began to stir with emotion. When it comes to ungrateful people, who can compare to Susan? If her biological father hadn't shown up when she was 16, I would never have known this was my sister Kathy. She's child. Her biological father was originally a good-for-nothing loafer, but later, by becoming a son-in-law, he leaped into wealth. His child is sick and needs an organ transplant, so he remembered the child he had in his early years of confusion. Although Susan was not particularly good at studying or daily life, he was still a child I raised with my own hands. How could I bear to let my own child donate organs for someone else's child? Moreover, she wasn't even of legal age, which made it an outright illegal act. I immediately drove him out, but he then turned to my sister and my mother to persuade me. In the end, I remained unmoved. I always thought Susan didn't know about this, but the first thing she did after graduating from college was to trick me into returning home, where she tortured me to death and even set my entire family on fire. After my death, my soul lingered in the world for a while. I watched as she publicly claimed that I had accidentally caused the fire by not paying attention while cooking at home, which ultimately cost me my life, and with the home accident insurance. She received a large sum of compensation. Then, using that compensation, she, along with my mother and Kathy, who had somehow been reunited with them, started a live-streaming e-commerce business under the guise of both parents in heaven, ultimately making a fortune. Life is so miserable. To this day, I still remember her complaints on the day she killed me. You clearly knew my biological father was wealthy, yet you still stopped me from reuniting with him. You said it was all for my own good. But in reality, you just didn't want me to leave, didn't want me to live a good life. You are so selfish, so malicious. I hate you to death. Today, you will die right here. I reached out my hand to call for help, but amidst the sea of flames, she left me with only a distant, receding figure. The last trace of familial affection I held for her also perished in that raging fire, consumed by the spreading flames. I let out a cold, silent scoff in my heart. Yet my expression remained unchanged as I calmly said, "Do whatever needs to be done. In any case, I won't adopt this child of unknown origin. Either you call the police, or you adopt the child yourself." After all, I looked up at her. She looks exactly like my sister did when she was little, doesn't she? This must be your destined fate. My mother was stunned by my words, a flicker of panic flashing in her eyes. In fact, the heavens gave me many hints that Susan was my sister Kathy's child. For example, Susan's facial features, which are 70% similar to Kathy's, or the identical mole in the same location, or the same allergy to blueberries. These were all pieces of evidence I couldn't ignore. At that time, I was blinded by family affection and chose to turn a blind eye to the evidence. Once bitten, twice shy, I squeezed the small hand in mine. Now, reborn into this life, I will no longer be the farmer, I will be the snake. My mother was a bit flustered. How can that be? I still have to go to work, and I don't have time to take care of this child. Besides, what would it look like if I adopted her? What if people suspect she's your sister's child? How would your sister ever get married then? As soon as she finished speaking, a police car pulled up beside us. My mother looked at me in surprise, while I shrugged indifferently. I just thought it over carefully. This child might not necessarily have been abandoned. It could be that some careless parent accidentally forgot her, and maybe her family is worried right now. So, I just sent a text message to report it to the police. I automatically ignored my mother's angry scolding behind me and the baby wailing in her arms. Happily heading home with Flower, Flower hummed a tune as she walked, saying, "From now on, I have a mom too." I imitated her, swaying my head and saying, "From now on, I have a daughter too." After adopting Flower, I renamed her Sunny, hoping she would integrate knowledge with action and never forget her true self. The first thing I did after returning home was to sign a "Never Be an Ingrate" contract with her and enroll her in a painting class. We got along very well. Just as Dean Smith had said, she was a likable little girl. She was well-mannered and polite, and from time to time, she would act coquettishly toward the two of us, which delighted us greatly. And after attending the painting class, she also fulfilled her initial promise. She painted more, prettier, and more vibrant flowers. There is a room specifically reserved for her to paint in, and because of her paintings, it is decorated like a huge, enormous garden. As for Susan, or perhaps she should now be called Linda, this is a name my mother spent a lot of money to have the village fortune-teller choose, meaning, the pearl in the palm. After leaving the police station, my mother called and scolded me harshly, and in the end, I embarrassedly took the child back to my hometown to take care of her. I have never liked going home, and my mother has always favored my sister. She doesn't care whether I come back or not, as long as the corresponding money arrives each month. So, for the past 6 years, I haven't seen Linda she even once, but suddenly, I received a call from my mother, who insisted I must return home without explaining why. After hanging up, I walked into Sunny's painting room. Would you like to go back to our hometown with Mom? Sunny put down the paintbrush, smiling with two little dimples. Okay, Mom. It was Sunny's first time returning to my hometown with me, and everything seemed incredibly novel to him. He spent the whole journey staring out the car window. After entering the courtyard, I saw Linda she again after 6 years. My mother brought her home, telling everyone in front of them that she had taken pity on her, as she had been abandoned shortly after birth. Unable to bear it, I took her in and raised her, fearing that people might suspect the child was related to Kathy she. I had her call me Grandma. By this time, due to my mother's doting, she had become a notorious, unruly, little tyrant in the village, and because of a lack of exercise, by the age of 6, she already weighed nearly 90 pounds, her whole body round and plump like a balloon. When I went in, she was squatting in the corner with a stone, not sure what she was doing. I told Sunny to wander around nearby and not go too far, then turned and went into the house. In the kitchen, my mom was washing vegetables. Over the past few years, having to take care of Linda she. That little troublemaker, and worrying day in and day out, she looked like she was in her 60s even though she was just over 50. I called out, Mom. She turned around, wiping the water from her hands. You're back. Come in, come in. What would you like to eat? I'll make it for you in a bit. I shook my head. No need, Mom, just tell me directly, what's the reason for calling me back today? Is it about Linda she again? Although I haven't returned to my hometown these past few years, she has come to see me a few times, and each time it was about Linda she. Every time, I found different excuses to send her away. She poured me a bowl of tea, as expected of my daughter. Nothing can be hidden from you. Ah, Juan, you know that Linda will be old enough to start elementary school next year. When she was in kindergarten, I could still teach her myself instead of sending her. But now that she's about to start elementary school, even if I wanted to teach her, I'm just not up to the task anymore. I picked up the bowl but didn't bring it to my mouth, saying instead, then just send her to elementary school. My mother's eyes immediately lit up. Send her, of course we'll send her, but, you know, the elementary school in the village isn't very good. I've already asked around in the village, and in your situation, you could actually adopt 2 children. How about this? You adopt Linda she, take her to the city, and get her enrolled in school. Once you've taken care of that, you won't have to worry about anything else. I'll handle the drop-offs and pick-ups every day, so she can attend a good school. I put down my bowl, looked at my mom, and said, Is that all? She nodded, looking at me with anticipation. I smiled and said, No way. My mom immediately changed her expression, slapped the table, and stood up. Why not? I hadn't had time to reply to her when a scream immediately came from the courtyard. Sunny. I set the bowl down on the table and rushed out immediately. When I reached the courtyard, I saw Sunny standing at the door, holding a small calico cat with singed fur, looking furious. Meanwhile, the female demon Linda she sat in the corner with a large bump on her head, crying loudly. I quickly checked Sunny's body from head to toe and found that aside from some scratches on her face, she had no other injuries. I breathed a sigh of relief, and when my mother felt the bump on Linda she's head, she rushed over with reddened eyes, ready to hit Sunny. You ungrateful wretch, after all the time I've raised you, you come back and hit my Linda. Do you have a death wish? As she spoke, her hand rose high, ready to strike Sunny. Quick as lightning, I grabbed her wrist, stopping her. Mom, what are you doing? I shouted loudly, shielding Sunny at the same time. Linda she cried loudly behind my mother. Grandma, she hit me, she hit me. Help me beat her to death. Sunny held the kitten, standing behind me with neither arrogance nor humility. With reddened eyes, she said aggrievedly, She hit me first, and she even wanted to kill the kitten with a stone. If I hadn't stopped her quickly, the kitten would be a pile of mud now. Looking at Sunny's aggrieved expression, my heart ached with pain. I know she's a kind child and wouldn't hit someone for no reason. As for Linda, she's domineering and unreasonable behavior. I had already witnessed it in my previous life. Upon hearing this, Linda she simply lay down on the ground and started rolling around. I didn't, she bullied me. Grandma, help me beat her to death, quickly beat her to death. My mother rolled up her sleeves and kept pushing me, trying to rush over to hit Sunny. You little brat. How dare you bully my Linda? Just wait and see how I deal with you. Pushed and shoved, I got angry and reached out, slapping my mother so hard she fell to the ground. I looked at her coldly. Enough. Who bullied whom? Let's just check the surveillance footage and find out." After saying that, I took out my phone, opened the surveillance video, and placed it in front of them. At the beginning of the video, Linda she desperately smashes a stone at a cat in the corner. And then Sunny steps forward to stop her. Linda she, dissatisfied with being stopped, picks up the stone and throws it at Sunny. Although Sunny could have fought back against Linda he always protected the kitten and did not retaliate. In the end, it was Linda she herself who rushed forward and hit her head on a stone, causing a large bump to swell on her forehead. After the video finished playing, I looked at them coldly. "Did you see clearly?" Linda she made the first move. My mother and Linda she were both stunned. Linda she's crying gradually subsided. She looked at herself in the video, her face filled with confusion. In the end, my mother helped Linda she up, brushed the dust off her clothes, and said in as calm a tone as possible, "She's just a child who doesn't know any better. It was just a bit of fun." I sneered. What kind of fun involves throwing stones at others? In that case, I might as well let Sunny throw stones at her too, after all. It's just children having fun, right? The neighbors, hearing the commotion, gathered around the courtyard to watch the excitement. Seizing the opportunity, I continued to taunt, so young and already capable of framing others, even causing Sunny to get hurt, just as Wong the fortune teller predicted. Wong the fortune teller was the one who gave Susan the name Linda she, and his fortune telling was exceptionally accurate, earning him the nickname Divine Calculator in the village. Upon hearing this, the people outside the courtyard became even more agitated than my mother. What did he say? Born with a curse, destined to bring ruin to the family. Mild cases lead to injury and financial loss. Severe ones end in family destruction and death. Wong the fortune teller's voice rose above the crowd. As soon as these words were spoken, the courtyard erupted in chaos. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some wearing expressions of fear, others looking disdainful. My mother's face turned ashen. Utter nonsense. Master Wong walked into the courtyard from the crowd, looking somewhat seriously at Linda she has a full-in fate, born destined to bring misfortune to her family. If I hadn't calculated it, the day after her birth would have been. Is it true? Don't you feel even a little bit of it? The onlookers began to murmur and discuss. Yeah, I remember not long after this child was brought back, Aunt Jane had to pay a huge sum of money to someone. Over the years, she's been constantly losing money, big and small. Exactly. I also remember one time she went up the slope to plant vegetables and accidentally fell down. I was the one who called people to help her back. Now, whenever it rains, you can hear her complaining about leg pain. I think it's mostly because she's cursed, and it's not just her. Her younger daughter, who married someone at the village entrance, is probably cursed too. I heard she got pregnant 3 times in 6 years. Miscarried twice, and finally gave birth, but the child turned out to be a fool. In the village, whatever Master Wong says is taken as gospel, and jinx is an even greater accusation in the village. My mother turned pale at the words, recalling all the past incidents, cold sweat trickling down her face. Linda she grabbed my mother's hand tightly. "Grandma, he's lying, I'm not a jinx." With that grasp, my mother couldn't stop trembling. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, she turned and pointed at me. "Since you say Linda brings bad luck, how come she's fine next door?" Aunt Wong directly mocked. "It's because you abused her so badly before. Now that you're old, she doesn't even want to come back to see you. The city is so far away, so she luckily avoided this disaster. You. My mother was trembling with anger. Linda she wanted to step forward to hug my mother, but my mother was startled by her and dodged to the side, causing her to fall to the ground. Her arms and face were scraped and bleeding all over. Ouch! Everyone gasped in unison and took a collective step back. Aunt Wong fanned herself with disdain. Oh no, Aunt Jane must have been cursed again. Linda she wanted to help my mother up, but my mother reached out to stop her. "You, don't come any closer, Master. My mother crawled over to Master Wong. She kept kowtowing. "Please, Master, save me." Master Wong sighed and glanced at me discreetly. I closed my eyelids and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Master Wong stroked his beard. At this point, there is only one way. Family members should stay away if possible. If they cannot, they must treat her as coldly as possible. Under no circumstances should they show her warmth or abandon her. Raise her like an ordinary child until she grows up. Once she reaches the age of 16, all hardships will be resolved. Cold. Master, I will remember it for sure. Not long after Master Wong left, I also took Sunny and departed. Sunny looked back at Linda she in the courtyard. Mom, is it true that her fate can bring harm to others? I nodded. Yes, in the future, if Sunny encounters her, it's best not to get too close. Although part of today's farce was orchestrated by me, his words weren't entirely false. In my previous life, I had also brought Susan back once, and Master Wang secretly approached me, telling me that she would bring me misfortune and that I must stay away from her, or it could ultimately lead to the ruin of my family. At the time, I just thought he was a money-grubbing charlatan, and I angrily drove him away. As it turned out, I was later killed by Susan, before returning this time. I called ahead to inquire and learned that my mother has been going around lately trying to arrange for Linda she to attend school in the city. I suspect that's why she's calling me back this time. But knowing my mother's personality, she won't give up until she achieves her goal. The previous few times were on my turf, so she couldn't easily stop me. This time, back on her turf, she'll likely try to trip me up in public, rather than waiting for her to strike back. I'd better take the initiative myself, so I went to Master Wang in advance, paid him to help me put on this big show today. After today's events, Linda she's image has been completely solidified in everyone's minds. Everyone sees her as an unlucky person who brings misfortune. Her status in my mother's heart, once as precious as a pearl, has now plummeted dramatically. I heard that after I left, my mother's attitude toward her did a complete 180. Originally, my mother always treated Linda she as the apple of her eye, taking great care of her and fearing that she would suffer even the slightest grievance. But now, my mother seems like a completely different person, treating Linda she with extreme indifference, even to the point of being harsh. She makes Linda she work like a beast of burden, handing over all the heavy and exhausting household chores to her, and loudly scolding her at the slightest sign of dissatisfaction. As a result, Linda she's life has become exceptionally difficult. The change in status was even harder for her to accept. Every day, she had to endure heavy labor and my mother's scolding, leaving her physically and mentally exhausted. Before long, her once plump, balloon-like body had thinned down to the point of being as skinny as a stick. However, her suffering seemed to have no end. I thought going to school would allow me to escape the heavy pressure at home and find a bit of peace, but when I arrived, almost the entire class was made up of people from the village. They had already heard about Linda she from various sources. The children who had been bullied by her and held prejudices against her now found even more reasons to bully her. They would intentionally bump into her during breaks, snatch her books, and even point fingers at her behind her back, mocking her appearance. Every time she tried to resist, she would only face even more intense attacks. And she could only endure it all in silence. Every day after school, she had to face my mother's scolding and heavy household chores. It was like being trapped in a nightmare with no escape, making each day incredibly difficult. She began to grow quiet and reserved, speaking and acting with timidity. It bears no resemblance to the bright and generous Susan from my previous life, who was pampered and spoiled, and both Sunny and I strictly followed the teachings, never returning to our hometown once before she turned 16. However, behind the scenes, I secretly arranged for someone to keep a close eye on her to prevent her from taking her own life if she couldn't bear it. Since she is so eager to find her wealthy father, I won't let her die so easily. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Not long after Linda she had just turned 16, her wealthy father came knocking on our door. His appearance led to our family being invited back to our hometown once again. At the dinner table, the atmosphere was unusually lively. My mother sat in the main seat, her face beaming with a proud smile. Meanwhile, my wealthy father, wearing a large, shiny gold watch and sporting a big belly, looked every bit the affluent and imposing figure. He raised his glass and toasted my mother, saying, "Thank you for taking care of my daughter all these years. I had no idea I had a child back then, which is why I never fulfilled my responsibilities as a father. Now that I've found her, I'm truly grateful to fate for giving me this chance. Here is a check for 300,000 yuan as a small token of my gratitude for all the years you've looked after her. I hope you'll accept it." After taking the check, my mother smiled so widely that her eyes nearly disappeared. Seeing this, I was reminded of the scene in my previous life when Chen Ming came to me and told me that Susan was his and Kathy she's child. He handed me a check for 500,000. "Thank you for taking such good care of Linda all these years, raising her so well. From now on, I'll take Susan back. I'll do my best to be a good father and make up for all the years I've missed with her." He spoke with genuine sincerity, but my expression remained calm. I pushed the check on the table back toward him. "Mr. Chen, there's no need for you to say these insincere words. We're all in business. although my family's business isn't as big as yours, I still have some sources of information. You don't have to pretend either. I know you're only looking for her to use her organs to save your child. We're all parents, and I can understand your urgency to save your daughter. Take the check back. I'll act as if nothing happened today. And you don't need to come again in the future. Chen Ming thought I was dissatisfied with the amount and eventually raised it to 800,000. At that time, I was extremely angry and, along with the nanny, drove him out. Now, with a different person offering a mere 300,000, my mother happily sent her back with a smile, completely disregarding the fact that she was his own granddaughter. After saying that, he turned his head and gently touched Linda Shi's cheek, a flicker of guilt flashing in his eyes. Daughter. It's Dad who's let you down. I haven't taken care of you all these years. Don't worry, once I take you back, I will definitely make it up to you and ensure you live a happy life. For so many years, Linda Shi had felt as if she were trapped in an abyss every day. Now, suddenly, Father had appeared who could rescue her from her suffering, and he was a wealthy dad. At that, how could she not be overjoyed? How could she not be excited? Linda Shi, with tears streaming down her face, said, "It's okay, Dad, it's not too late to meet now. From now on, we can just live well together." Sonny couldn't make it because he had to prepare for an art exhibition, while my husband sat beside me, happily munching on crab legs. It's good that we met. It's good that we met. I pursed my lips, thinking to myself, he only knows how to be foolishly happy. Probably in his past life, he was poisoned to death because he was too naive. I sighed. Wasn't I a fool in my past life too? At the dinner table, everyone was joyful, except for Kathy Shi. A few years ago, she was looked down upon by her in-laws for not being able to have children and was eventually divorced. Although she had been pregnant several times intermittently, the only one who truly grew up successfully was Linda Shi. Kathy Shi sat there without saying a word, his face gloomy. I raised my glass and congratulated Linda Shi. Congratulations on finding your biological father. You'll be living a good life from now on. Upon hearing this, she immediately lifted her head, a proud smile spreading across her face. Of course, from now on, following Dad means enjoying the best of everything. Chen Ming stood nearby, watching her with a beaming smile on his face, but there was not a trace of warmth in his eyes. I looked at her arrogant demeanor and couldn't help but sneer inwardly. She thought that finding her wealthy father would allow her to soar to great heights, but she had no idea what kind of abyss awaited her upon her return. At that moment, Kathy Shi suddenly stood up. I disagree. Linda Shi was taken aback, turning to look at Kathy Shi with a furrowed brow. On what grounds? Seeing this, my mother quickly grabbed Kathy Shi, signaling her to keep quiet, but Kathy Shi broke free from her grasp and continued, "Because I am your mother." As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere at the dinner table immediately became tense. Even my husband, who had been mindlessly enjoying his crab, put down the crab in his hand. Linda Shi let out a cold laugh. "So you finally admit it. Ever since you came back to live here, the villagers have been saying we not only look alike but even share the same allergy to blueberries, and I just happened to be adopted and brought back during the exact 2 years you were studying away. Can there really be so many coincidences in the world? I asked you and Grandma about this several times, guessing the truth, but each time I was beaten badly and thrown into the dark room. From your reactions, I figured out my guess was right, and you knew all along that I was your biological daughter, yet for so many years you never cared for me, letting me suffer here without ever speaking up. Now that Dad has come looking for us and has become incredibly wealthy, you suddenly step forward and claim to be my mom. How ridiculous is that?" Linda Shi became exceptionally frantic, her gaze at Kathy Shi as if she wanted to kill her. Kathy Shi gritted her teeth. "Anyway, I said no, and that means no." At this point, Linda Shi was in no mood to listen to any more words. Blinded by rage, he charged over and started fighting with Kathy Shi. The two of them wrestled, and the situation quickly spiraled out of control. While fighting, Linda Shi complained, "Why, what gives you the right to decide my life? You gave birth to me but didn't raise me. Raised me but didn't teach me. You've treated me so poorly. Finally, someone came to love me, someone who could give me a good life. What gives you the right to stand up and say no?" The two fought fiercely, and by the time they were finally pulled apart, the originally somewhat celebratory feast had been completely wrecked by them, and both of them were left with injuries. My mother sat on the ground, wailing loudly, her voice filled with heartache. "My home, my table, you two unfilial daughters." Kathy Shi, her face covered in wounds, sat on the ground sulking, not uttering a word. I found Linda Shi in the courtyard, crying with red eyes in Chen Ming's arms. Her shoulders were trembling, and Chen Ming was holding her, softly comforting her. I walked over and gently patted Chen Ming's shoulder, signaling him to leave for a moment. He glanced at me, nodded, and after helping Linda Shi stand steady, he left first. Seeing me arrive, Linda Shi's swollen eyes were filled with vigilance and hostility. She said coldly, "What are you doing here? Have you come to mock me too?" I shook my head and took out a red envelope from my bag. "Of course not. I came today to celebrate your return to the family, and I even prepared a big red envelope for you. I just didn't have a chance to give it to you earlier." After receiving the red envelope, her mood immediately improved. "You know what's good for you." I suppressed my disgust and stepped forward to hold her hand, beginning to persuade her. "Linda Shi, don't blame your mother. She was so young when she gave birth to you, barely an adult, and naturally not mature enough. And your grandmother, she adored you at first, but only after the fortune teller said you would bring misfortune did she have to treat you that way. In the end, it was all for your own good. If anything were to happen to you, they would probably be the ones who suffer the most. Now, your mother is stopping you from going back, but deep down, it's because she can't bear to let you go. You're her only child, and after all the effort it took to raise you into an adult, even if she doesn't like you, she still cares about that mother-daughter bond. Otherwise, why would she speak up now and not before? It's not like she's jealous that you might have a better life than her, right?" The more she listened, the angrier she became, so agitated that she nearly ground her teeth to dust. I sighed and pretended to be sincere as I patted the back of her hand, which was covered in scars from being scalded by hot water. "That's all I have to say to you, Linda Shi. You should think it over carefully." Using family matters as an excuse, I left first with my husband. Before leaving, I took one last look back at Linda Shi. She clenched her fists and stared into the room, her eyes filled with hatred. I smiled with a slight curve of my eyebrows and left without looking back. "You wanted to return to your wealthy father's home, didn't you? Well, don't let me down, Linda Shi." A month later, I returned to my hometown once again. This time, it was to collect the bodies of my mother and the other two. Aunt Wang next door told me that shortly after we left last time, Chen Ming also took Linda Shi and left, but less than half a month later, she returned, acting crazy and disheveled. She was completely dazed and foolish, covered in bruises all over her body, faintly. You could even see a few freshly stitched knife wounds on her body, some still oozing blood. She kept muttering nonsense like, "It shouldn't be like this," and "My mother should be Shiwan." Aunt Jane, the pig butcher at the village entrance, recognized her and quickly sent her back. By then, she had lost all value and had even become a fool who understood nothing, so my mother decided to go all the way and tied her up with a dog chain, feeding her a few scraps of leftovers every day, keeping her in the house like a dog. 2 weeks later, she suddenly regained her senses and called out to my mother to let her out, saying it was time for her to cook. My mother thought she seemed quite normal, so she let her out. As a result, after a meal, both my mother and Kathy she fainted, and after drinking an entire bottle of paraquat herself, she set the house on fire. By the time everyone discovered it, the fire was already too big to be extinguished. When I arrived, all that remained before me was a stretch of ruins, and 3 charred bodies that had been pulled from the debris. After giving them a proper burial and handling all the necessary arrangements, I left my homeland for good. Perhaps I will never return here again in the future. The grievances between me and them vanished along with the fading of that great fire. In the same month, Sunny's art exhibition was successfully held in Kyoto. Because her paintings are filled with a dazzling and romantic style, the exhibition immediately made her an internet sensation as soon as it was held. Within a few days, it attracted many art enthusiasts to come and appreciate her work. As a result, she was also named one of the top 10 outstanding young painters of the year. Half a month later, she was invited to participate in a live-streamed festival called "I Am an Artist." As one of the interviewees, the host asked curiously, "Miss, we are all very curious. The paintings in the exhibition you previously organized were all related to mothers, so why did you name it Give You a Big Garden?" Sunny playfully winked at her and said, "Guess." Upon hearing this, everyone in the audience burst into laughter. The host smiled gently and waved a hand toward her. "I really can't guess. Why don't you reveal the correct answer to us, Miss?" Sunny smiled slightly and looked at the audience. "I believe everyone knows that I am an adopted child. Before my mother adopted me, I had been considered by other parents a few times, but in the end, they all gave up because I was too old, until I met my mom, the one sitting in the front row right now, my dearest mom. she won, mess, she pointed a finger at me, and the people around turned to look. I sat in the audience and silently mouthed the word, naughty, at her. Of course, there's also my dad sitting next to Miss Leo, old man Leo, don't take it to heart, old man Leo, I'm not playing favorites. Next time I talk about something related to my father, I'll definitely mention you, Sonny said with a smile. My husband pouted and whispered, I'm not that petty, though it sounded like a complaint. The corners of his mouth were raised so high that even an AK couldn't hold them down. Sonny looked at me with a smile in his eyes. I once thought I might never have a mother again, but until I met Ms. I realized that all the missed opportunities before were just preparations for your arrival. I once had grand ambitions, thinking that the first thing I would do after making money was to join a painting class, to create more beautiful and vibrant flowers, and then invite Ms. to admire my grand, magnificent garden, but Ms. didn't give me the chance to fully realize this grand ambition, because she took me home right away and immediately enrolled me in the painting class I had been longing for, eliminating any hope of me having to earn money before I could sign up. Although I could no longer fully fulfill my promise, the remaining parts still had to be completed, so I painted day and night, observed many flowers, and created many paintings, all in search of the most beautiful one. Yet, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't capture the feeling I was looking for. It wasn't until I saw Ms. and a photo of my biological mother that I understood. At that moment, I realized that the most beautiful flowers in my life are my two mothers, Ms. and my mother in heaven. How do you like such a garden? The light shone on my face, illuminating the tears on my cheeks. I didn't make a sound, just reached out and kept applauding her. 2 seconds later, the venue was enveloped in a wave of applause. I looked at Sunny on the stage and pulled out a photo of her biological parents from my bag. Can you see it from afar? Our daughter, how dazzling she is now. I believe you, like me, are proud of her. After all, she is our daughter. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My mother-in-law gave me moldy fruit to eat while I was pregnant, causing me to have a miscarriage, yet she proudly praised herself. Although the grandson is gone, I took care of my pregnant daughter-in-law. I am the best little lamb. After my miscarriage, while I was in confinement, my mother-in-law insisted on helping me bathe, but she used cold water, nearly freezing me to death. She said with a smile, my daughter-in-law doesn't like to be clean, so I gave her a bath. I really am the most diligent little sheep. I told my husband and father-in-law about these things, but they defended her, saying, she's doing it for your own good, don't be so particular about it. Later, my mother-in-law, knowing full well that I am allergic to peanuts, ground them up and added them to my milk. When I angrily confronted her, she said with a pitiful tone, I wanted to make sure my picky daughter-in-law gets balanced nutrition. Even though she scolded me, I'm still the bravest little lamb. My father-in-law and husband quickly rushed to comfort her, and no one noticed that I had suffocated to death from the peanut allergy. Opening my eyes again, I chose to let my mother-in-law be the brave little lamb, allowing the whole family to feel her goodness. Coming back to my senses from the suffocating pain, I gasped for air in big, heavy breaths. Looking at the familiar scene before me, I realized I had been reborn. My mother-in-law was deliberately bringing the cut fruit to me, saying sweetly, Ching Ching, these are fruits I specially prepared for you, eat them quickly, they're good for the baby. In my previous life, I thought she meant well and was deeply moved as I ate those fruits. Within half an hour, I was in excruciating pain and went into shock. By the time I was taken to the hospital, I had already miscarried. The doctor said it was due to a mold infection. It was only then that I realized my mother-in-law had cut up all the moldy fruits and fed them to me. I cried and told my husband, but he frowned and defended his mother. My mom is used to being frugal, she didn't mean it. You should be more careful about what you eat from now on. My father-in-law also said leniently, your mom has always been simple-minded since she was young, but she means well. My mother-in-law proudly praised herself, saying, although my grandson is gone, I took care of my pregnant daughter-in-law. I am the best little lamb. When I returned home from my postpartum confinement, my mother-in-law volunteered to take care of me again. After seeing that I hadn't showered for 2 days, she forcibly dragged me into the bathtub. The icy cold water nearly cost me half my life, as my body was already extremely weak. Even so, she stood before my husband and father-in-law, smiling as she said, my daughter-in-law doesn't like cleanliness, so I gave her a bath. I really am the most diligent little lamb. When I could no longer bear it and decided to divorce my husband, she brought me a glass of milk with peanuts as an apology. I took a sip and immediately had an allergic reaction all over my body. When I angrily confronted her, she said with a pitiful tone, making my picky daughter-in-law eat a balanced diet. Even though she scolded me, I'm still the bravest little lamb. Everyone rushed to comfort her, while I died from suffocation due to my peanut allergy. Afterward, they just sighed and blamed me for having a short life, for not giving their family a son or daughter. Since I've been given a second chance at life, I not only want to let my mother-in-law be a brave little sheep, but I also want the whole family to experience her goodness. I pushed the fruit out of my mother-in-law's hand and refused. I don't want to eat fruit right now, you can have it yourself. My mother-in-law immediately put on a dramatic act, saying with a pitiful tone, "Ching ching. Do you dislike Mom? Mom has tried her best to be a considerate little lamb, and you're still not satisfied with me." Upon hearing her words, her husband immediately darkened his expression with displeasure. "Ching ching, isn't this going too far? My mom kindly cut fruit for you to eat, and what kind of attitude is this?" I glanced at him and said coldly, "Su Xiaoming, your mother gave me moldy fruit to eat, and you call that good intentions?" Su Xiaoming looked at his mother-in-law with confusion. "Mom, is what Ching Ching said true?" His mother-in-law looked at him, pouting as she said, "I carefully selected all these fruits, so Ching Ching should have them first, and we can eat the rest." Su Xiaoming immediately believed her words and angrily shouted at me, "Dong Ching Ching, don't go too far. Look how good she is to you, she even picks out the best fruits for you to eat." My father-in-law also came over to defend my mother-in-law. "Your mother has always been too naive and kind-hearted in her life, making her an easy target for outsiders to bully." "Ah, naive and kind-hearted, she keeps calling herself a little lamb all day long. If you didn't know better, you'd think her brain hadn't fully evolved." I gave them a cold glance and decisively dumped the kitchen trash can right in front of them. The moldy parts of the fruit that had been cut off were laid bare before them. I said bluntly, "I'm pregnant, and you call her pure and kind? You call this for my own good? I think it's pure malice." My mother-in-law's face turned pale, and like a girl who had made a mistake, she grabbed Su Xiaoming and my father-in-law by their sleeves and shook them. "I just want to be the best little lamb. Why does Ching Ching say that about me?" They immediately comforted her, turning to me and saying, "What's wrong with a little mold? It's all been cut off, why can't it be eaten?" I sneered coldly, "All right, then you two go ahead and eat. Eat it we will, you're the only one who's so high and mighty." Refusing to eat this and that, under the watchful, disapproving gaze of their mother-in-law, the two of them polished off the entire large plate of fruit. Soon after, they were clutching their stomachs in pain, their faces turning pale, and I went back to the bedroom, locked the door, put on my headphones, and went to sleep. Within a few minutes, their pain grew increasingly severe, to the point where they couldn't even speak, and they rolled on the ground in agony. My mother-in-law was frantic this time. "What should we do? What should we do? Get up quickly and drink some hot water. Some hot water will make it better." She hurriedly came to knock on my door. "Ching Ching, come out quickly, Xiaoming and your dad have stomachaches, come out and see what to do." "Ching Ching, Ching Ching." I helplessly took off my headphones, switched to a completely soundproof earplug, and went back to sleep. The evil consequences of the wicked lamb, may your whole family enjoy them thoroughly. Later, it was a neighbor who came to deliver something and saw the two lying on the ground, having fainted from the pain, who called 120 for help. The doctor said that if they had arrived any later, they would have suffered intestinal perforation, and their chances of survival would have been slim. After being discharged from the hospital and returning home, the two immediately threw away all the moldy fruit in the house. I held back my temper and repeatedly warned my mother-in-law not to eat moldy food anymore. My mother-in-law lowered her head and agreed, but her eyes kept darting toward me, who was perfectly fine. I didn't pay any attention to her and went back to my room to work on my computer. My mother-in-law brought me a glass of milk and said in a strained voice, "Ching Ching, don't overwork yourself, have a glass of milk and get to bed soon." I casually asked, "There's no peanut in this, right?" A flicker of unease crossed her face. "Of course not, I know you're allergic to peanuts, so I prepared this especially for you, drink it quickly." After being deliberately killed by her peanut allergy in my previous life, I dare not casually drink anything she gives me. I said calmly, "Put it there, the work I'm doing is very important, I'll drink it after I finish." Sure enough, her eyes shifted, and her hand tilted toward my computer. A glass of milk spilled all over my computer, and the screen instantly went black. She stood beside me, looking completely at a loss. "Ching Ching, I didn't mean to." I just wanted to be a caring little lamb and take good care of you." Just then, my husband heard the commotion and walked in, immediately saying without even asking what happened, "Dong Ching Ching, if the computer is broken, just fix it, I'm begging you. Can you please stop always giving my mom a hard time?" I gave a considerate smile. I know she didn't mean to. "It's fine, there are still your and Dad's computers in the study. I can just borrow one later, my work is very important. It must be finished tomorrow." The more I emphasized it, the more my mother-in-law would cause trouble for me. First, I used my husband's computer, which was accidentally ruined by my mother-in-law with another cup of water. I then went to use my father-in-law's computer, and it didn't escape the same fate either. Without saying a word, I smiled and pulled out a stack of paper documents. "It's fine. Writing on paper works just as well for me." My mother-in-law immediately smiled and said, "Ching Ching is really hard-working. I'll keep you company while you work, being a diligent little lamb." "Great." I pretended to be writing notes, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mother-in-law holding a lighter, clicking it on and off as she played with it. Suddenly, I accidentally set the documents on the table on fire. Smelling the smoke, my father-in-law and Su Xiaoming rushed in and quickly doused the flames with water, seeing their computers and important documents destroyed. Their faces instantly flushed with anger. "My computer contains crucial project data for the company. How am I supposed to explain to the company if it's broken? My supervisor needs these files for the bidding tomorrow. How could they all be burned? I'm going to lose my job." They questioned me sharply. "Dong Ching Ching, did you deliberately try to ruin us?" Pointing at my mother-in-law, I calmly explained, "It was her doing. She was holding a lighter and setting fires everywhere." "Didn't you say not to give her a hard time? If the computer's broken, just fix it. If the files are gone, just redo them, right?" The mother-in-law still hadn't put down the lighter in her hand. She couldn't deny it, yet she still spoke with an air of righteousness. "I just wanted Ching Ching to feel a bit warmer. Who knew I'd accidentally set the papers on fire? It wasn't on purpose. When it happens to them, they are not so magnanimous." Her father-in-law roared at her, "You spendthrift woman. Do you know how much trouble you've caused me?" Su Xiaoming also shouted angrily, "Can't you use your head? Even a 4 or 5-year-old child knows not to play with fire at home. If I lose my job tomorrow, it'll all be your fault." The two of them scolded her and then slammed the door on their way out. My mother-in-law stared at me with a gloomy look in her eyes. I raised my fist, tilted my head, and gave her a slight smile. "Go for it. You're the best little lamb." She was so angry that her face turned pale, but she didn't dare to waste any more time and quickly went to comfort her husband and son. "Although I haven't had a miscarriage in this lifetime, I no longer want to have a child for Su Xiaoming. If I continue to live with this family, I will eventually lose my life. I must divorce him and stay away from this family." I scheduled an abortion appointment at the hospital, planning to go under the guise of a prenatal checkup to secretly terminate the pregnancy. I never expected my mother-in-law to insist on going with me no matter what. Before leaving the house, she smiled at my father-in-law and Su Xiaoming and said, "Today, I'm taking the initiative to accompany Ching Ching for her prenatal checkup. I really am the best little lamb." I thought she wouldn't be able to cause any trouble on the way. I didn't expect her to start playing the curious little lamb again while I was driving. "Ching Ching, what is this stick in your car for?" I glanced at her movements out of the corner of my eye and was instantly so frightened that my heart skipped a beat. I roared, "That's the gear shift, don't touch it, it's dangerous." She simply wouldn't listen, using all her strength to fiddle with the gear shift, and said with a grin, "I want to see how it works. Today, I'm a little sheep who loves to learn." I couldn't pry her hands away, so I could only nervously try to keep the car steady while shouting loudly, "Let go quickly, or we'll crash." "Let go." The speed of the car was under her control, sometimes accelerating sharply and sometimes suddenly reversing, constantly running red lights, and nearly causing several accidents. I didn't dare to press the brake pedal hard, fearing that the car would lose control and cause even greater casualties. The obvious abnormality caught the attention of passing traffic police, who chased after me and warned me to stop the car immediately. Seeing that I was about to hit a traffic police officer blocking the road ahead, I disregarded my own injuries and slammed on the brakes, urgently steering the car toward a tree by the roadside. The car came to a stop, but my stomach was hit with a dull, throbbing pain. I pushed the car door open, my face pale with anger, and shouted at the furious traffic officer, "Please, take me to the hospital right away." But my mother-in-law, looking terrified, tried to stop me, saying, "Uncle officer, she deliberately drove so fast and ran the red light. Please educate her quickly, and don't let her use going to the hospital as an excuse." The young traffic police officer stiffened at being called uncle by her, then turned to me with an unfriendly tone. Madam, please step out of the car and cooperate with our investigation. Your actions have already constituted the crime of dangerous driving. Pretending to be sick now is useless. I glared fiercely at my secretly pleased mother-in-law and, enduring the intense pain, climbed out of the car. The blood flowing from my pants immediately startled the traffic police. I gritted my teeth and said with difficulty, I'm having a miscarriage. Please take me to the hospital first. I'll cooperate with anything. By the time the traffic police took me to the hospital, the baby was already gone. I touched my stomach, feeling not much regret, as I never intended to keep it in the first place. My mother-in-law, however, cried out and called for my father-in-law and Su Xiaoming, looking terrified as she said, Qingqing drove the car extremely fast, ignored me and ran a red light, and even deliberately crashed the car into a tree. Husband, son, does Qingqing hate me for being a brave little lamb and want to crash me to death? Su Xiaoming slapped me right there on the hospital bed. Dong Qingqing, how vicious you are. How dare you treat my mother like this, especially when she was so worried about me that she insisted on accompanying you for your prenatal checkup. Get down on your knees and apologize to my mother right now, or I, Su Xiaoming, will never forgive you. My father-in-law also angrily scolded me, saying, You beast, you're a murderer. You should be arrested by the police, if anything happens to my wife. I'll make you pay with your life. My blood was boiling with rage, and I grabbed things from the table, hurling them frantically at these people. Fine, let's see who should be the one going to jail. At that moment, the traffic police officer handling the accident walked in. The mother-in-law said with a smile, It was me who asked the police officer to arrest Qingqing. I really am the best little lamb. Unexpectedly, they walked straight toward the mother-in-law. The police sternly addressed the mother-in-law. Ms. Wang Shuya, you are suspected of obstructing safe driving. Please come with us. Su Xiaoming and the father-in-law quickly stepped in front of the mother-in-law, urgently saying, Are you mistaken? The driver was Dong Qingqing. It has nothing to do with her. The police retrieved the video from the dashcam I had handed over to them. It clearly showed my mother-in-law causing trouble while I was driving, deliberately and forcefully pulling on the gear shift. Even after I repeatedly shouted at her to stop, she stubbornly refused to do so. It was clearly intentional. The mother-in-law defended herself with an innocent expression. I had no idea that pulling that thing could be dangerous. I was just curious and wanted to play with it because I'm a curious little lamb. The father-in-law also spoke up in her defense. That's right, my wife was just curious. She didn't mean any harm and didn't know it was interfering with safe driving. Please don't take her away. I'll talk to her properly when we get home. The two police officers exchanged a glance, and one of them pointed to his head, carefully choosing his words as he spoke. May I ask, is your wife having issues here? The father-in-law immediately became furious. You're the one with issues. My wife is perfectly fine. The police immediately felt relieved and said no more, grabbing the old woman's arm to take her away. Since there's nothing wrong with her mind, then this behavior is intentionally obstructing driving, which is a very dangerous act. It's fortunate that it didn't cause major casualties, otherwise she could have faced several years in prison. In this accident, the person who suffered the most harm is Ms. Dong Qingqing. She intends to pursue accountability, so we must take the person back to file a case, no matter what they said. The old woman was forcibly taken away by the police. Su Xiaoming angrily pointed at me and shouted, Dong Qingqing, do you still have any conscience? My mother treated you so well, why are you trying to hold her accountable? I stared at him intently and said coldly, Su Xiaoming, your dear mother just killed your child. The doctor said it was a boy. When Su Xiaoming and my father-in-law heard me say it was a son, their faces immediately fell at the same time, probably cursing my mother-in-law silently in their hearts. When he spoke again, he was already lacking confidence. Qingqing, we can have another son in the future. Please go and tell the police to drop the charges against my mom. After all, she is my mother, and she accompanied you to the prenatal checkups for your own good. I lifted my chin and spoke word by word. Fine, Su Xiaoming, I want a divorce from you. As long as you sign the divorce agreement, I won't hold your mother accountable. Su Xiaoming looked at me in disbelief, exclaiming in shock, Dong Qingqing, what are you talking about? You want to divorce me over such a trivial matter? This is no trivial matter. If I stay in their family any longer, I might not survive. Yes, I am determined to get this divorce. If you don't agree, I will pursue it to the end. Let your mother have a criminal record, and then your Su family's descendants can forget about taking the civil service exam. He was so angry that he wanted to hit me, but I wasn't afraid of him at all. And I said fiercely, "If you dare lay a hand on me again, I'll call the police and report you for domestic violence. I'll make sure your whole family becomes famous." Su Xiaoming was so furious that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He pointed at me twice in a row. "Fine, Dong Qingqing, you just wait." Su Xiaoming and his father-in-law wanted to pull strings at both higher and lower levels to get his mother-in-law released. I just left them with one sentence. If there was any privacy involved in this matter, I would post the dashcam video online and let everyone judge for me. In the end, to get his mother-in-law out, Su Xiaoming had no choice but to sign the divorce agreement with me. This time, Su Xiaoming and his father-in-law completely lost patience with his mother-in-law. Because of her last arson incident, her father-in-law was demoted by his unit, and Su Xiaoming lost his job directly. Moreover, to help her smooth things over, they spent a lot of money. They originally thought their mother-in-law was simple and kind-hearted, just trying to do good but causing trouble instead, but now their perception has completely changed. When their mother-in-law once again used the microwave to heat a stainless steel bowl and blew up the kitchen, she comforted herself by saying, "I'll cook for you all using the microwave. I'm the bravest little sheep." Her father-in-law slapped her aside with one hand and shouted loudly, "I think you're just a foolish sheep. How many times have I told you that metal can't be heated in the microwave? Why can't you remember? Is your brain just for decoration? Day after day, you're more of a hindrance than a help. I must have been blind to marry such a fool like you." The sight of his wife's tear-filled eyes no longer softened the old man's heart. He stormed out without even glancing at her. When Su Xiaoming went to get the clothes he planned to wear for his morning interview, he couldn't find them anywhere, so he went to ask his mother. His mother wore an expression of eager anticipation for praise as she said, "Son, I washed all your clothes. I'm such a diligent little lamb." Su Xiaoming glared and roared, "Mom, can you please stop causing trouble? Those were the clothes I was going to wear for my interview today. Now that you've washed them, what am I supposed to wear? Haven't you already cost me my job? Do you want to make sure I never find work again?" The mother-in-law said with grievance, "Mom just wants you to be happy. I'm doing all this for your own good, son." Su Xiaoming said angrily, "Please, I'm begging you, the greatest happiness for me is for you to stop doing things for my own good. If you really have nothing to do, why don't you go join the square dancing? Stop causing trouble for this family. It's really annoying." After a long silence alone, my mother-in-law finally understood. It was all because of me that their attitude toward her had changed, so she came to me again. She blocked the entrance of my company building, holding a loudspeaker and shouting, "Dong Qingqing, please come home. If you don't come back soon, your father-in-law and my son will blame me. It's all my fault. From now on, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. I'll cut fruit for you, wash your clothes, and even bring you water to wash your feet every day. I'm willing to do it all. I just beg you to come home." Suddenly, she became the hard-working and dutiful good mother-in-law, while I became the unreasonable and willful villain who bullied her. The onlookers quickly blocked the entrance, forcing me to go down and handle the situation. As soon as she saw me, my mother-in-law said with a pitiful expression, "Qingqing, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have ridden in your car, and I promise I won't do it again. Please go back and live a good life with my son. If you don't want to see me, I can go to a nursing home and never be in your sight again." The onlookers, hearing her speak so pitifully, began to criticize me one after another. "How can you be so domineering? Won't you even let your mother-in-law sit in your car? Don't you think you'll grow old one day? How unfilial. Aren't you afraid of karma? You're such a grown-up, with hands and feet, yet you let your mother-in-law serve you. How shameless, such a daughter-in-law. Whoever marries her is unlucky." A glint of satisfaction flashed in the mother-in-law's eyes, and her tone grew even more humble as she said, "Qingqing, if it really won't do, I'll kneel down for you." As she spoke, her knees began to bend toward the ground. The person being watched quickly steadied themselves, faced with the angry gazes of the crowd. I didn't rush to explain. Instead, I played the dashcam video I had imported to my phone for everyone to see. As soon as they finished watching, their expressions completely changed. What kind of menace is this? Clearly, they were trying to kill someone. No one sympathized with her anymore, and those who had protected her quickly let go. My mother-in-law's legs were awkwardly half-squatting, and she stood up on her own. Amid her livid, angry expression, I spoke up clearly and introduced, "My former mother-in-law not only caused trouble while I was driving, leading to a car accident that cost me my child, but she also fed the whole family moldy fruit, nearly causing her husband and son to die from intestinal perforation. She claims to be the best little lamb with her words, but in her actions, she is determined to ruin everyone. I dare not go back to her home anymore. Moreover, I have already signed a divorce agreement with her son. Her entire family has nothing to do with me now. I stared at her coldly and said in a chilling tone, Wang Shuya, if you don't leave my company right now, I will have security drag you out. Wang Shuya glared at me fiercely, then after a moment of thought, she argued again, Dong Qingqing, you're just making all this up. I'm the best little lamb, and you're just jealous of me. You've been married into my family for less than 2 years. And now you want to divorce my son. You're just a marriage scammer. If you don't come back with me, believe me, I'll call the police and have you arrested for fraud. The onlookers heard the best little lamb from her mouth, and their faces immediately became even more meaningful. They all began to sympathize with me, wondering what kind of weirdo I had encountered. I was amused by her foolish words. Then go ahead and sue. I didn't accept your family's betrothal gifts. Nor did I ask to have my name added to your family's house deed. I even paid for the renovation myself. Oh, right, I almost forgot since you didn't bring it up. Now that we're getting divorced, I can't just let my renovation go to waste for you. Today, I'm going to tear down everything I renovated. I won't leave you a single floor tile. Wang Shuya could no longer pretend to be innocent and pitiful. She raised her voice sharply. How dare you, once you step into my house, everything becomes mine. Don't even think about taking anything away. Afraid that I might actually go and damage the renovation, she quickly left and headed home. I wasn't just trying to scare her either. Since my belongings had been left untouched for a while, I decided to go and retrieve them all at once, worried about being at a disadvantage if I went alone. I brought along 7 or 8 renovation workers and 2 tall male friends to accompany me. As soon as they entered the house, they were stunned by my posture. Su Xiaoming swallowed hard and exclaimed in shock, Dong Qingqing, what are you trying to do by bringing so many people here? I glanced at Wang Shuya, who was huddled on the sofa and didn't dare to speak, and smiled slightly. It was your dear mother who came to my company to remind me that when we got divorced, I forgot to take away the renovations I paid for. I thought I shouldn't leave them there to bother you, so I smashed them all today. Leaving nothing behind, Su Xiaoming quickly said, Dong Qingqing, there's no need to be so harsh. We parted on good terms, so you don't have to go this far, I said calmly. I didn't originally have this intention, but since your mother personally came to remind me, I now find it very necessary. He glared angrily at his mother. What did you do again? Didn't I tell you not to do anything? Are you determined to tear this family apart before you're satisfied? Then he turned around, wanting to say something softer to me, but I didn't waste any more words on him. Instead, I spoke to the renovation workers. Tear this house down to its bare structure. They tried to stop us, but the sight of the renovation workers wielding sledgehammers and electric saws scared them from stepping forward. The sound of clanging and banging immediately rang out as the workers swung their arms and began smashing. Before I got married, this house was just a rough shell. Su Xiaoming coaxed me into using my own savings to renovate it. I thought that since they bought the house, it was only fair for me to cover the renovation costs, but I forgot to think one step further. If we divorced, I would lose everything, tens of thousands of yuan thrown in, and all I got to hear was this one round of noise. While they were smashing the renovation, I went back to my original room, packed some of my belongings into a suitcase, and prepared to leave. Wang Shuya, however, stopped me with a smile on her face. Qingqing, we've had a bond over these years. Since you're leaving, let's have a meal together before you go. I have something I want to say to you. I didn't need to think to know she had ill intentions. Su Xiaoming and his father also knew. They anxiously said, Wang Shuya, please stop causing trouble. What else do you want to do? But she insisted with a determined look. I just want to have one last meal with Qingqing. You don't need to come. Just the 2 of us will go eat. I raised an eyebrow, thought for a moment, and agreed. I wanted to see what other tricks she had up her sleeve. She led me to an old-fashioned hotpot restaurant and specifically requested a private room. To prevent any misunderstandings, I secretly turned on the camera and pointed it at her. However, I never noticed any suspicious behavior from her. Instead, she was busy helping the owner serve the dishes to me. Actively ignite the gas stove used for cooking hot pot. Then she said to me with a smile, Qingqing, I'll treat you to one last hot pot meal. Today, I am a brave little lamb protecting my family. I felt that there was really something wrong with her mind and said coldly, just say whatever you have to say. There's no sentiment between us worth having a farewell meal over. Wang Shuya's eyes held a hint of malice as she said, Qingqing, the tripe at this place is really delicious. I'll go get you 2 more plates right now. She had been gone for over 10 minutes and still hadn't returned. Suspicious, I stood up to leave, only to find that the door of the private room was locked from the outside and wouldn't open. My heart skipped a beat. When I turned back to look at the gas leaking under the table, I saw that the valve had already been damaged, and I instantly understood what she intended to do. She wanted to blow me up right here. Is she insane? This is a restaurant. Innocent people could get hurt. I pounded on the door with all my strength, but there was no response from outside. I quickly went to push the window, only to find it was also tightly sealed. In a panic, I grabbed a stool and started smashing it. Gas was still leaking, and in the urgency of the moment, I mustered all my strength and managed to break the window. I hurriedly climbed out, ignoring the height of the second floor, and jumped down at an angle. Then I immediately shouted to warn everyone of the danger. I also raised my hand to call the fire department, hoping that an explosion wouldn't occur, but just as I hung up the phone, not even 2 minutes later, the private room I had been in on the second floor suddenly exploded. Flames erupted along with black smoke, and people screamed as they ran away. Firefighters quickly arrived and brought the fire under control, with 2 people suffering severe burns at the scene as they were carried out. I felt that the partially burned clothes on their bodies looked somewhat familiar. Isn't that Su Xiaoming and his father? At that moment, Wang Shuya, who was standing not far away with a malicious smile on her face, suddenly spotted me. She froze all over, then rushed toward me, shouting loudly, "Dong Qingqing, you should have been burned to death inside. How could you be here, you wretched woman? How can you be so lucky?" I glared at her fiercely and said angrily, "Wang Shuya, you lunatic. Do you realize that what you're doing could kill many people? We don't have any life or death grudge between us, so why are you going to such lengths to try to kill me?" Wang Shuya showed a fierce expression, gritting her teeth as she said, "You wretched woman, ever since you married my son, you've monopolized his attention. Even my husband speaks up for you. You just want them all to revolve around you. You're trying to steal my place in this family. I'm telling you, you're dreaming. I am the most beloved little lamb in this house. My son and my husband can only have me in their eyes and hearts." At this moment, I feel utterly absurd and speechless. I took a deep breath and pointed at the 2 people lying on stretchers not far away, saying, "Wang Shuya, go and see who those 2 people are." She turned her head with a cold smile. "It doesn't matter who it is. In the future, my son and my husband." Her words trailed off, and she suddenly widened her eyes and ran over. After recognizing the 2 people who had been burned beyond recognition, she broke down and screamed, "My son, my husband, oh my God, shouldn't you be at home? Why are you here? Why on earth is this happening?" But the 2 severely burned individuals were unable to answer her. Amidst her wailing and crying, the police handcuffed her hands. Because I provided the entire video up until the moment she confessed to the crime, she was arrested on suspicion of intentional injury. After the ambulance arrived, Su Xiaoming and his father were carried onto it and taken to the hospital for emergency treatment. It turned out that the 2 of them were worried that Wang Shuya might cause more trouble, so they followed her to check on the situation. They never expected the timing to be so coincidental, arriving just at the moment of the gas explosion. This must be karma. The 2 of them survived after being rescued at the hospital, but they suffered extensive facial disfigurement and permanent burn scars. After waking up and learning that everything was done by Wang Shuya, they were filled with intense hatred. They called her a scourge and wished they could tear her apart. Wang Shuya, knowing she had severely injured her husband and son in the explosion, spent the whole day wailing in regret. She ignored the police's questions, just repeating over and over, "I wanted to kill Dong Qingqing. I am the best little lamb. I didn't mean to." But even if she didn't admit it, the evidence of her crime was already very solid, and she was publicly sentenced to life imprisonment. During the trial, Su Xiaoming and his father came to watch. When Wang Shuya saw them, her eyes lit up with surprise, and she called out to them loudly, "Husband, son, you came to see me. You've forgiven me, haven't you?" "I didn't mean to do it." The 2 men already harbored extreme hatred for her, unleashing a torrent of abuse in her direction. They cursed her with the most vicious language, and if not for being restrained, they would have beaten her to death. Wang Shuya was reduced to tears by their scolding, her regret so profound it felt like her insides were turning green. But it was already far too late. This was also the last time she would ever see them. Until the day she died, they never came to see her again. Meanwhile, Su Xiaoming and his father, in order to pay for medical treatment and skin grafts, had no choice but to sell their house. Their family went from being a fairly well-off middle-class household to suddenly falling to the bottom of society. Every time he thought about all of this, he would curse Wang Shuya. "It's all because of that bitch. She's the one who ruined us like this. If it weren't for her, why would Dong Qingqing divorce me? I would have had a son with my family of 3 long ago. I must have had the worst luck in 8 lifetimes to have run into her, that jinx." The two of them spent countless nights cursing each other, and after I completely broke free from that family, I finally returned to a normal life. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.